Welcome to another episode of Microsoft Knowledge Nuggets here on M365 FM. I'm your host, Mirko Peters. Today's topic is vulnerability management. And it's one of those terms almost everyone has heard, but most people don't really understand. Most people hear vulnerability management and think, that's the monthly scan, then we install updates. That's not wrong, but it misses the hard part. A scan can give you a list of CVEs, those public labels for known software weaknesses. But when you have hundreds or thousands of results, the real question isn't what can we patch? It's what should we fix first? Think of your company like an office building. You've got front doors, side doors, windows, locks, and maybe an old storage room nobody remembers. Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management is like a security guard walking through that building. It spots weak locks, tells you which entrance creates the most risk, sends the repair job to the right team, and then checks that the lock actually got fixed. By the end of this knowledge nugget, you'll understand discovery, priority, remediation, and proof, all in plain English. Because one unmanaged laptop or one old browser can still leave a route into the building. So let's start with why a patch list on its own often fails. Here's the thing about a patch list. It's just a list. It doesn't tell you what to do. The problem: too many warnings, too little direction. For a long time, vulnerability work followed a familiar pattern. A team ran a scan every month or every quarter. Someone exported the results into a spreadsheet. Another person compared that sheet with a patch report, and then emails started flying between security, desktop support, server teams, and application owners. The list got longer, the work became harder to track, and the business still needed one answer. What creates the most risk right now? And that's a real problem. That's the difference between patch management and vulnerability management. Patch management is about applying repairs. You update Windows, you update Chrome, you remove old software. Vulnerability management decides which repair should happen first, who needs to do it, how urgent it is, and whether the repair actually worked when it was done. That decision matters because not every warning deserves the same response. A CVE is a public reference number for a known weakness. Think of it like a product recall number. It tells you a problem exists in a certain version of software, but it doesn't automatically tell you whether that problem puts your company in immediate danger. You might see a very high severity CVE on software that sits on an isolated test device, isn't in use, and can't reach anything important. At the same time, you might find a lower rated weakness on a finance laptop that connects to sensitive files every day. If attackers are actively using that weakness, the finance laptop becomes the bigger problem. Severity is useful, but it isn't the full picture. You need to know the context around each weakness. Imagine your company has 500 laptops with Google Chrome installed. A new Chrome update comes out and Defender shows a known weakness in an older version. At first glance, you might think every one of those 500 devices needs the same urgent treatment. But then you look closer. Most of the laptops belong to office staff, sit behind normal protections, and will receive the update during the next managed window. One laptop belongs to someone who handles finance records, travels often, connects from public networks, and has an active alert linked to suspicious activity. Same browser issue, very different situation. That is why vulnerability management needs business context. Is the device exposed to the internet? Is there a public exploit available? Has Microsoft seen related threat activity? How many devices have the issue? Does the device hold sensitive data? Is it a normal workstation, a server, or a system people rely on to run the business? Without those answers, teams often patch by panic. They start at the top of a severity list, rush changes into production, and sometimes interrupt a business system that had little real exposure. Meanwhile, the weakness an attacker can actually use stays open. Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management helps turn that noisy list into a clearer order of work. But before Defender can rank a weakness, it needs to answer a more basic question. What devices and software do you actually have? That sounds simple, but you'd be surprised how many organizations don't know. Discovery: finding what you don't know you have. Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management is the part of Defender that tracks weaknesses across your devices over time. It watches for outdated software, missing updates, unsafe settings, and other gaps that could let an attacker in. This isn't like running one scan, saving a report, and hoping nothing changes before the next check. Defender for Endpoint collects signals from devices you've onboarded. Those signals tell Defender what operating system is running, what software is installed, which versions are there, and where known weaknesses might live. The picture changes constantly because your environment changes constantly. Someone installs a browser extension, a device misses an update, a certificate gets close to expiry, a new software weakness becomes public. Instead of waiting for a spreadsheet review, Defender keeps that information connected to the devices it sees. That ongoing view starts with a question you might not want to ask. Do you actually know every device connected to your company network? Most companies think they do, until they look. Defender Device Discovery uses the devices you already manage with Defender for Endpoint to notice other devices nearby. A managed laptop sees network activity around it and reports that an unknown endpoint or network device exists. That might be another computer, it might be a printer, a router, or a device somebody connected without going through normal setup. Picture a small company office. The IT team has a list of company laptops, and all of them appear in Intune and Defender. Then Device Discovery notices an old test server in a corner of the network. Nobody owns it now, but it still runs. It also notices the reception PC that never moved to the new management system, a printer with old firmware, and a personal laptop connected to the office Wi-Fi. None of those devices showed up in the normal reports, but they were still there. That difference is worth slowing down for. Device inventory shows the devices Defender knows and manages. You can look at details like the operating system, security state, installed software, and related findings. Device Discovery helps you find the gaps outside that known list. It gives you a starting point for asking, should this device be onboarded, managed another way, restricted, or removed from the network? You can't protect a device you don't know exists. The same idea applies to software. Defender's software inventory builds a list of applications found across your onboarded devices. You see the software name, publisher, version, and which devices have it installed. From there, Defender connects that software to known weaknesses and shows which devices are exposed. This becomes useful when one outdated app appears across dozens of machines, or when an old component sits inside an application nobody thought to check. You're not searching device by device. You can start with the software, then move to the affected devices, or start with a device and see what software needs attention. The view goes beyond normal desktop apps too. Depending on your setup and what features you've enabled, Defender Vulnerability Management can assess things like digital certificates, browser extensions, firmware, hardware security settings, network shares, and configuration gaps. A browser extension might ask for broad access to websites. A certificate might use an old method or be close to expiring. A shared folder might give far too many people access. Firmware can be old even when Windows is fully updated. These aren't always patch problems. Sometimes the right fix is a setting change, removing software, tightening access, or replacing an old device. Here's one boundary to keep in mind. What Defender can see depends on your licensing, the platforms you use, whether devices are onboarded, and which features you've turned on. Discovery is strong, but it isn't magic. A device outside the supported setup or completely disconnected from your environment won't suddenly give you a full report. Still, once you have a clearer list of devices, software, and weak spots, a bigger problem appears. Where do you begin? Prioritization, choosing the door an attacker can actually use. A long vulnerability list doesn't tell you what to do first. Many teams rely on CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. It gives a weakness a severity rating, often from low to critical. That rating helps, but a severity score describes the weakness in general. It doesn't know your company, your devices, or what an attacker can reach. Microsoft Defender Vulnerability Management adds that missing context. It looks at the weakness, but also at signals around it. Is there a public exploit? Has Microsoft seen threat activity connected to it? Does the issue link to an active alert in your environment? How many devices are affected? Are those devices ordinary workstations or systems that handle sensitive files and business work? This changes the question from which CVE has the highest number to which issue creates the most exposure for us. Think about the office building again. A loose lock on a garden shed is worth fixing, but an unlocked front door beside the finance records is a different problem. Both are security issues. Only one gives somebody a direct route to something far more sensitive. Defender uses that kind of thinking when it ranks security recommendations. You'll see an exposure score, which gives you a broad view of how exposed your organization is. Lower is better. It isn't a grade for whether your company is safe or unsafe. It's more like a warning light that helps you see whether the number of open routes into your environment is moving in the right direction. You may also see Secure Score for devices. This looks at device security settings and shows where you can improve them. Maybe devices need a stronger security setting, a safer configuration, or a control turned on. A higher score usually means more recommended protections are in place. Still, don't treat either score like a guarantee. A good score doesn't mean an attacker can't get in. A lower score doesn't tell you exactly where an attack will happen. The scores help you decide where to look and measure whether your work reduces exposure over time. The practical work happens in the recommendations. Open a recommendation, and Defender can lead you from the weakness to the affected software, to the exposed devices, and then to the action that can reduce the issue. That path matters because it prevents guesswork. You might start with a vulnerable software component. From there, you see which version caused the issue, which devices still carry it, and whether a software update, setting change, or other action addresses the weakness. Sometimes the detail changes the order completely. A vulnerable file may appear on many devices, but that doesn't always mean each device carries the same risk. One file might simply sit inside an old archive and never run. Another could be loaded by an active process and listening for traffic on a network port. Those are very different conditions. The second device gives an attacker a more realistic route in, so it deserves attention sooner. Defender can also connect this work with threat analytics. These are Microsoft reports about emerging threats and active attack campaigns. They help answer useful questions. Are we affected by this threat? Do we have devices exposed to it? Are there alerts showing it already touched our environment? What mitigations reduce the risk while teams prepare a full fix? You can see why patching everything as fast as possible isn't always the best plan. A rushed update can interrupt a business app, break a workflow, or take down a service people need. That doesn't mean you ignore updates. It means you use the context Defender provides to focus effort where it reduces the most risk while planning changes safely for the rest. So Defender gives you a clearer first fix, but knowing what needs attention and actually changing a device are two separate jobs. Defender now needs to hand that work to the people and tools that can apply the repair. Remediation, from security finding to real work. So here's a common misunderstanding: Defender vulnerability. Management doesn't turn into a universal patching engine the moment it finds a problem. Its real job is to identify the issue, rank it, assign work, track progress, and check the result. The actual change might happen through Intune, ServiceNow, another ticket system, a software deployment tool, or even a hands-on change by an IT team. Think of Defender as the place where security work gets clear ownership. A security recommendation gives you more than just a warning. It links the action you should take to the affected software, the related weakness, and the devices in scope. It can also show you the expected reduction in exposure if you address it. So instead of sending someone a vague message saying, "We have a browser problem," you can point to the exact version, the affected devices, and the action required. From that recommendation, a security team can create a remediation request. They select the device scope, set the priority, add a due date, and include notes for the team that will do the work. Maybe the update needs testing first, or a certain business app might be affected, or the request can't wait for the normal update cycle. That turns a security finding into a piece of work with a named owner and a deadline. The handoff matters because security and device management teams often have different jobs. Security teams watch for risks and decide what needs attention. Device teams know how updates reach laptops, servers, and apps without interrupting the people who need them. With the Intune connection in place, Defender can send that request into Intune as a security task. The Intune team can review it, accept it, apply the update or configuration change, and report progress back through the shared workflow. Nobody needs to copy device names from one portal into a spreadsheet. Nobody needs to attach screenshots to a long email chain. If your company uses ServiceNow or another ticket system, the same idea applies. Defender provides the finding and context, while the ticket system manages the work in the process your IT teams already use. That gives everyone the same record. Security can see what they asked for. It can see why the work matters. Managers can see whether the issue is open, in progress, overdue, or completed. Now imagine Defender identifies a serious browser weakness on a group of devices. The security team opens a remediation request and scopes it to the affected browser version. They mark it as high priority, set a due date, and add a note that the update should begin with a pilot group. The device team receives the Intune security task. They update a small group first, maybe the IT team and a few volunteers. They check that the browser works with the company's sites and line of business apps. Once that looks good, they roll the update out in stages to the remaining devices. Progress appears in the task, and Defender then checks the devices again as they report in. That staged approach might feel slower than clicking update all, but it prevents one bad update from becoming a company-wide problem. A pilot group gives you a small, controlled place to find trouble before everybody feels it. Sometimes a full fix can't happen right away. Maybe a server runs an old application that only works with a specific browser version. Maybe a vendor needs time to confirm a patch. Maybe the business has a fixed maintenance window. That doesn't mean the issue disappears. Create an exception, document why the system can't change yet, and set an end date. An exception should be a temporary decision with a visible review date, not a quiet way to forget about a risk. While you wait, you may be able to reduce the danger in another way. You might block a vulnerable application from running. You might apply a temporary mitigation recommended by the software vendor. You might limit where the device can connect until the permanent update is ready. The point is to reduce the open route while the full repair is still being planned. And this leads to a mistake that catches many teams. A completed ticket doesn't automatically mean the security gap is closed. Verification and the connected Microsoft 365 building, the update may show as deployed in Intune, the ticket may say complete. Neither one proves the vulnerable version has disappeared from every affected device. Defender Vulnerability Management keeps checking the signals coming back from those devices. If a laptop stayed offline during the update, failed the install, or still reports the old software version, the finding can remain open. That matters because it stops a team from closing work based only on a deployment report. When the affected devices no longer show the weakness, Defender can mark the remediation activity as completed. That is the proof you want. The device itself reports a changed state and the exposure has cleared. You can also use the event timeline to see how the story changed over time. A new weakness appears, a recommendation is created, a remediation request is sent, devices update, the remaining exposed devices become easier to spot. It gives security teams, IT teams, and auditors one shared record instead of several disconnected reports. The wider Microsoft 365 connection matters too. Intune manages device settings and compliance. Defender for Endpoint detects threats and calculates device risk. Entra ID uses those signals when somebody tries to access company services. Imagine a laptop that has a serious security problem and no longer meets your company's compliance rules. Intune can mark that device as non-compliant. Then Entra ID conditional access can stop it from opening SharePoint, Teams, or Exchange Online until the device returns to an acceptable state. The person still has an identity, but the device does not get trusted access while it carries too much risk. That is a practical security control. It limits what a risky device can reach, even while the IT team works on the full repair. Purview adds another piece of context. Purview helps identify and protect sensitive information such as finance records, customer data, or confidential files. In exposure management, a device that regularly handles highly sensitive data can receive higher criticality. That changes the order of work. The same weakness on a general meeting room PC and on a laptop used for sensitive finance documents should not automatically receive the same response. Think of Microsoft 365 as a connected office building. Entra ID is the reception desk. It checks who is signing in and whether they should get through. Intune is the device manager. It keeps track of company laptops and applies their rules. Defender for Endpoint is the security guard. It watches for threats and suspicious activity. Defender Vulnerability Management looks for the openings attackers might use before an attack begins. Purview is the records room. It knows which files need the most care. Each service has its own job, but they share useful signals. That means fewer blind spots and less time lost passing information between teams. You can see what remains open, who owns the work, and whether the change actually reduced exposure. So how do you turn all of this into a simple routine? Your first vulnerability management routine. So here's the thing about vulnerability management. It's not about guessing which patches to apply or hoping you covered everything. Defender Vulnerability Management gives you a live view of what's actually exposed, what matters most, and what still needs to be fixed. Let's break it down into a few simple steps. First, make sure your devices are onboarded to Defender for Endpoint. Then check the discovery results for any devices that are sitting outside your managed list. Those are the ones you need to bring in. Next, review the top recommendations. But don't just look at severity ratings. Check exploit activity, device exposure, and what role that device plays in the business. That tells you what to prioritize. Then create one tightly scoped remediation request through Intune or your ticketing system. Finally, verify that the affected devices actually clear the finding and document any exceptions with a reason and an end date. That way nothing slips through the cracks. For the next knowledge nugget, we'll connect Defender for Endpoint and Intune and show how device risk can control access to company data.